Do you have a minute for Comadre time? Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host Marcy, and today we have an amazing guest. Her name's Julie, and I will let her introduce herself. Who are you?
Hi there. Hi, Marcy. I'm Julie Fisher. I'm the Executive Director of NYC Autism Charter Schools, and I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Awesome. Okay. So, sorry. Comadres, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is going to sound a little bit different than usual. So today's topic is, are charter schools a good fit for students with special needs? And the reason why the topic came up is that there have been many differing viewpoints as to whether or not charter schools meet the needs of children with extraordinary needs or neurodivergencies based on the models of other charter schools. So I brought Julie on just to get it from the horse's mouth and see, for you guys to make your own decisions, okay? But before we get into the topic, I'm going to get some minute details out of the way. So what is your profession?
So I am an autism educator, have been for many, many years. I actually started working with kids with autism when I was an undergraduate in college, which is ages ago at this point, and just did it sort of on a lark, did a fieldwork experience studying to get my psychology degree, and I just absolutely fell in love with it and have not looked back ever since. So took a brief hiatus, went to social work school, but then back to working with kids with autism. Initially did early intervention and then fell in with the two moms that founded NYC Autism Charter Schools. And so I have been in a leadership capacity ever since they opened in 2005.
I am also an autism mom. What was it about working with children with autism that really spoke to you necessarily?
You know what? I just feel like I can understand and communicate with children. Children generally, I would say, make much more sense to me than adults do a lot of times. And for some reason, children on the spectrum really have always touched my heart. I've always developed really strong, deep, close relationships with them. And I just find it incredibly fulfilling.
I love kids on the spectrum too. I mean, not just because I'm an awesome mom, but also I've been working with kids with autism since I started teaching, which has been about 9 years already. And before then, while I was pursuing my master's, I was an assistant teacher in District 75 here in New York City. So that's my little spiel of why I love working with them. So tell me more about the people that funded set up the charter school initially. What was the idea behind it? And let's go with that, and then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, I was really doing home-based early intervention prior to 2005 and met two incredible moms who were running home-based programs for their relatively newly diagnosed kids with autism. Lots of hours a week of applied behavior analytic intervention, ABA. And when their children both hit school age, they were kind of struck by the fact that there just didn't seem to be a lot of good fit options for their kids. Both of whom were on the more profoundly affected end of the spectrum. They were being told by many to move out of New York City to investigate programs in New Jersey and in other places. One of the moms actually enrolled her son in one of those programs and was driving him across the bridge to and from every single day. And they both decided that they wanted to look into creating more options for families, so that every family had choices about where they enrolled their children for school. And so initially they looked at some of the more traditional options outside of district public schools were non-public programs, which, many of which are nonprofit, but also tend to require, in some cases, litigation on the part of parents in order to justify enrollment there, which is, not optimal and not going to be a fit for many families. And they managed somehow to connect with folks in the charter school world and thought, wow, this is sort of the best of all worlds, because charter schools are public schools. They have to be open to all families. They have to enroll in a sort of random lottery system that doesn't, give preference to certain families over others. And but at the same time, charter schools are able to kind of design their programs in unique and different ways. And in my mind, that is exactly what children on the spectrum need, right? There is no cookie cutter way of educating a child on the spectrum because all children on the spectrum are so very different from one another, have different strengths, have different areas of challenge. You really have to kind of design a curriculum for each individual if you're going to educate them as effectively as possible. And so what they liked about this idea of a charter school is they could really, in theory, set that up to look that way. They could staff it differently than most district public schools. And so they went ahead. It was not an easy road because a school like this had never existed in New York before. So they had to make their case without having something to show, to show them what it would look like. And but it was successfully approved, and we've been open ever since. Interesting story, charter schools, as I said, have to take kids in by lottery. Some states allow for children of founders to get in automatically. New York State does not. So they put their children in the mix with all the other kids in that lottery, and their children did not get in. So these two moms spent all this time working on this school, but, a real sign of their commitment and dedication to the autism community. They both stayed actively involved in our school. One remains on our board to this day. And I think that's a real testament to who they are.
No, that's a great story. So as a public school teacher, I've seen kind of both sides of the spectrum. There are some other charter schools, which I'm not going to name because I'm not going to speak ill about them, but a lot of the time their tactics for recruiting students is that they target the students that are high achievers in the schools, and then they go ahead and recruit them that way. And then after they're there, a lot of them, if they have special needs and they can't meet their needs behavior wise, they send them back to the public school system, which is I find a little problematic because it's interrupting the children's learning. And not only that, especially kids on the spectrum, they need, as you know, they need some sort of normalcy and like a sequence or a schedule that they're adhering to. So that interruption in learning when they're back in the public school system affects their behavior a lot, and it like getting them back to the system and then changing their routines is very hard. So I'm glad that you guys tailor to children with autism, but what are some of the criteria for keeping the kids in the school, and what sort of behavioral approaches do you guys have for the students to meet their needs?
Yeah. Well, again, I can really just speak to our school because that's the charter school that I know the most about. And as I said, we are really designed specifically for kids that are more profoundly affected, which means many of our kids don't have vocal language, may have limited understanding of language, may have many challenging behaviors that interfere with learning, may not be toilet trained when they come to us. And our program is really designed in such a way that we have the supports in place to be able to meet the needs of kids that fall into those categories. And so we are staffed incredibly well. We have, in many of our classrooms, a 1-to-1 instructional ratio. We have board certified behavior analysts on staff, lots of them, who are working on reducing challenging behavior, setting up, as you said, visual support, schedules, reinforcement systems. We work very, very closely with parents and family members so that anything that we're doing at school is carried over at home and vice versa. Parents are communicating to us all the time about anything that comes up that they are struggling with at home, and we'll work to design systems at school that help them with whatever those problems are. That means that a lot of times we're actually not focused on academics. So our metrics for success look really different than most schools. Our kids are not, in many cases, able to sit for standardized tests. So that measure is sort of out the window. And what we're really focusing on are the things that we know are going to make a difference in the lives of our kids and their families once they leave us. And a lot of times those are things that fall into the realm of independence, self-care, personal safety, being able to, do for themselves, take care of themselves, be in the community successfully, be able to tolerate things that are really hard, like doctor visits, haircuts. Like those are all things that we're actually working on. We actually have sort of skill acquisition programs to teach those things in very systematic ways.
I love
And
that.
we have, yeah, and we have, some home overlap also, so that not only are we training parents and giving them skills, but oftentimes we're joining them in the community. So if we worked on teaching children to tolerate a haircut, let's say, our last step of that is actually going to the barbershop with the family to make sure that it's actually translating into that setting. So we're really designed specifically, which most schools aren't. You can't do that in a classroom of 27 kids with one teacher. Like that's just not something that you can do. So it's tough because kids like ours, especially, they really do need very specialized supports. And I think maybe not all schools are equipped to provide that.
I love that. And I love the fact that you said that the metrics are not the same as regular public schools, because my son, for example, has been opted out of testing since I want to say since he was 5 years old, when he joined the public school system from early intervention. Yeah, and I've been saying that not only for neurodiverse children, but also for neurotypical children, testing doesn't show anything. It just shows that you can regurgitate facts. Literally, that's it. If you really want to show that a child is learning, give them a project, give them an objective, and have them use the skills that you taught them to resolve that problem and to show what they know. So yeah, I like that model. And then so you have BCBAs on staff to help the teachers with the behavior?
We do, yeah. I mean, really all of our staff are trained in the principles of applied behavior analysis. We use ABA across the board in all classrooms. And lots of our staff, we invest a lot in our staff too. A lot of our staff are working towards, they're in school getting their special education degree or working towards their master's in behavior analysis. It sort of varies. But we really look at, I love our classroom model. There are clinical supervisors who are those BCBAs that kind of oversee multiple classrooms. Within each classroom, there's a head teacher and then what we call instructors. So the head teacher technically has oversight, but really it's such a collaborative model. Everyone is considered an important part of the team and an important player for every student that's in that classroom. Everyone's responsible for a series of skills that they work on with each student, and there's kind of a rotation. So I think if you walked in and observed one of our classrooms, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick out who the teacher is versus the instructor. Everyone is sort of given a lot of responsibility and accountability. And I think that's what makes it the most effective for our students, but also a great place for people to work.
Great. That's awesome. So the head teachers, do they usually have a master's degree, or are they working towards a master's?
I would say almost all have a master's degree, many in special education, but some in applied behavior analysis. So we have some teachers that are considered kind of highly qualified.
Okay, great. Good to know. All right. So how long have Autism Charter schools been open for? Since 2005 or?
Yep, 2005 we opened in East Harlem. That was our first school. And then in 2017, we opened our second school in the South Bronx. So it took us a while. You look at the speed at which a lot of networks replicate, it's really fast. But I think it was important for us to make sure that we did it well, thoughtfully, and that we were able to, and I think this is super important, we were able to seed that new school with a ton of staff that had already kind of grown up in our East Harlem campus. So that just made for this like very consistent carryover.
Okay.
And the opening in the Bronx was very smooth. One of the reasons we picked the Bronx is because we saw, we have a very long wait list, as you can imagine. We're a small school. We get lots of applicants every year, and we don't have enough seats to, we always end up having a long wait list. But when we looked at that wait list, it was really skewed to Bronx families more than just about any other borough. And we get applicants from all over, but it was really noticeably heavy in the Bronx. And we really felt like that it just made sense for us to have our next school in that borough as a result.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, it sounds really great. I have a question because I did work in District 75 for about 5 years of my career as an assistant teacher, and then once I had my master's, I was there for like 3 years. So one thing that I noticed in the school where I was working at, we did have the flexibility of creating our own curriculum. The only thing I found it difficult as an educator, especially first time teacher, creating everything from scratch. I felt that we needed kind of like a springboard, like something, not necessarily like a calendar, because the thing is we had a calendar. Okay, you guys have to teach this month with no real plan. So is there like some kind of base curriculum which the teachers can differentiate up or down or sideways or whatever for the students? Is there like something that they can work off of to create the lessons?
In a way, so we have a curriculum of programs, so so we call them skill acquisition programs, which is like every little skill that I want to teach a child has its own skill acquisition program. So that might be brushing teeth, that might be, labeling pictures, it might be reciprocating comments about something. And we're using all of our assessment information. So we do sort of assessments, autism specific assessments for kids that give us kind of baseline metrics about where they are in different areas. We get lots of information from families also.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of pick and choose from these domains that our curriculum is sort of broken down into, about 23 domains that include expressive and receptive language, self-care, whatever it may be. And we're sort of pulling these skill acquisition programs based on assessment results and information that we've gathered and sort of piecing together this pie. And a lot of that work is led by the clinical supervisors. So they are kind of working with teachers on that in a very supportive, collaborative way to figure out, and parents, to figure out what is that right mix of programs that we're working on. And then there's a little bit of a logical trajectory. We've got sort of like, these are the current active programs. These are all the things that come next that we think are important to work on afterwards, with the idea that there's also flexibility. If all of a sudden parents are reporting that a child is having difficulties in a certain area that they've never seen before, that gets looped in. But we have the curriculum is a place to look for guides on how to teach each of these skills that we identify. So that's kind of how it works.
That's great. Okay. So since you guys have been open since 2005, what have been some of the most memorable moments during the program?
So many. Really, seriously, so many. So it's been amazing to watch the evolution of the school. It's been amazing to watch us grow in size and grow and watch each student grow. I mean, all the kiddos, came in at 5. Many of them are 20, 21 now. And so it's been incredible to watch them grow and see all the amazing skills that kids have acquired. We've had many kids who have done very, very well with intensive instruction, who've been able to leave us and go to less restrictive settings. That's incredibly joyful to see. We've also had many kids who, are clearly very much on the autism spectrum, may still not have vocal language. For example, I'm thinking of one young man, and I hope indulge me while I tell you this story, because it's just always one that is very powerful for me. He was very challenged when he came in terms of, behavior that we saw, also not toilet trained, very limited understanding or ability to even stay in a seat or demonstrate sort of basic skills. And I know, with toilet training, which we really try and hit that as early as possible and really, make sure that that's worked on. It was really a struggle for him. And we decided at a certain point, you know what, we're just going to move into his house for a little bit, which we did. We basically spent days over a few weeks at home with his mom. God bless her. Love her so much. And we worked on it with her all day long in some cases and got it, which was great. And gradually, he started learning more and more skills that would allow him to just start to show some independence. I remember Mom let us know at one point that they hadn't been back to their home country since before he was born. She was really wanted to go, very nervous about traveling on the airplane with him. Very nervous because one of the things that he loved to do was flick stuff. So loved to flick dirt and sand, especially. And she was really worried about him on the beach, flicking sand, getting into his eyes and all that kind of stuff. So we basically just set up programs to work on those things. His teachers, who are all remarkable, created a kind of mock airplane, had him practice sitting and doing things on screens. We showed it to mom. She carried over practice at home. So he learned to just be able to sit for long periods of time and be okay. We taught him to tolerate wearing wraparound sunglasses so that his eyes were protected. And I mean, these are things that, parents of typical kids don't even think about these things. But something like, taking a vacation, if your child only eats one food, one brand of chicken nugget, that becomes a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
How do you travel in that case? But anyway, we taught him all these skills, and I'll never forget, they went on the trip and she sent us these incredible pictures of him on the beach. I mean, that's definitely a memory that will stay with me forever, for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I have a whole episode about traveling with your kid with special needs and how to prepare for it, because there's a lot of things that come into play that parents of neurotypical children don't really need to consider. No, it's just something that it's not in their world. So how would they know?
Yep.
So definitely that's something. I love that you guys actually do that and that you take into consideration what the kids' needs are to modify the programs so that they can be successful. That's awesome. All right. So one more story. So how have you seen the children grow since 2005? You guys already have teenagers and adults that have graduated from Autism Charter schools. What kind of lives do those children lead, and what have they gone on to do?
Well, we haven't had that many graduates because, again, we had 5-year-olds start in 2005. So we've just started to have sort of graduating classes of 21-year-olds. Marcy, I'm not going to lie. I think that the adult service world is lacking a bit. So in some cases, we've taught kids really important skills, given them opportunities to do work internships, for example, where they've gone into work environments supported by our staff and practice job skills. But what we found is when they leave us, the supports for those kinds of things and the sort of framework to allow for it's a little bit lacking. So I think we have some instances where kids have been able to go on and do a lot of that and have their life filled with different kinds of activities that parents have set up for them. But it's tough. And it really falls back once again to parents to be the ones to have to really steer the ship, be scrappy, figure out how to get their kids into the different little systems, which are and I think now even more than ever post-COVID, when there are issues with staffing and all that kind of stuff, even, spots at some of these places are few and far between. So it's been a little challenging for us. I think that's an area when I look at where I'd love to think about how we can grow and do more. It's kind of what kind of bridge program might we create, or what other adult services are out there that we could connect families with in sort of a more robust way. But we definitely have had lots of kids also, as I mentioned before, who have graduated to go on to less restrictive environments, who are doing very well out there in some cases at this point in regular education. I would say most often they leave us to go to another less restrictive specialized program, but some of them have gone on from there to regular education programs and are doing really well. So that's always nice.
That's awesome. Okay, so I know that your staff has to be very special. So what are some of the criteria that you look for specifically for the people that you hire to work in the schools and the campuses that you have in Harlem and in the Bronx?
Yeah. Our staff are incredibly special. They really are. I adore every single one of them. And I think when I look at our leadership team, I have leadership team meetings actually every Wednesday. So I just had one today, and I look at that Zoom screen at all of the leaders on my team. And many of them have been with us for, 10, 12, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
These are folks that started as instructors. In one case, our head of school in East Harlem actually started as an intern when she was an undergraduate.
Wow.
And has stayed with us. So we have this longevity and these folks that have really committed and invested in not just the autism community, but our organization in particular. So that really sets the tone, I think, from the top. When I'm looking for staff, truthfully, the most important thing is a love of children. And you can see that in an interview. You can see that when you watch people interact with kids. I think that a joyfulness and a positivity is one of the most important things. That is something that I really pride myself on in terms of our organization. I think when folks come in to visit, 99% of the time, the first thing they comment on is the kids look so happy and your staff looks so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super important to me. And I think it's super important to all of our parents too. So a joyfulness and a positivity and a willingness to kind of like look silly sometimes, truthfully. I think, you can't be sort of uptight and inhibited. You have to be like flexible, willing to go with the flow, and willing to, kind of look a little silly at times to get the job done.
Awesome. So going through your day, what is the most fulfilling part of your job? Like walking through the day from the morning to the evening, what is like the best part of your day?
It's always going to be seeing the kids for sure. So I try and do as much of that as possible. And staff know that I love it. So often I'll get visitors to my office, even if I can't get out into the classrooms very much. I'll have kids come by and say hello. That is definitely my favorite. I think that, at a certain point in my career, I started getting a lot of reinforcement from working directly with staff. Like, I think that watching them grow is almost as powerful as watching kids grow for me now. And I really, really enjoy working with my team, seeing the spark in their eye when they solve a problem, or learn something new that they can apply. It's really exciting to help support staff in becoming, the next generation of autism leaders.
So as far as trainings, do you guys have like monthly trainings or weekly? How does that work?
So we have weekly staff meetings that are sometimes divided. We have sort of different tracks for newer staff or more seasoned staff. We also have a lot of folks who are working toward their BCBA, so they have their own kind of research meetings and supervision meetings and things like that. We also, with the leadership team, have a lot of one-to-one meetings. So I'll meet directly with heads of school, and we do a lot of discussion and training during those. Similarly, clinical supervisors with head teachers with their staff. So there are a lot of opportunities for kind of training and support. I think, again, weekly we do that didactic professional development in the form that you usually think of it. But sometimes I think the most valuable learning comes from the hands-on, work with kids.
Yes.
When there is, someone who is a bit more experienced overlapping and disseminating information like in the moment to someone who's newer.
I definitely like that model. As far as evaluations go, how does it work at least in your charter school? Because I know you can't speak to the other ones. Well, how does that usually work?
Evaluations of staff, like performance reviews?
Yeah, performance reviews and things like that.
Yeah. So I can't speak to other charter schools, but we have created a very specific rubric for our staff. I know a lot of, I think at least, some portion of staff evaluations in most traditional schools ties into student performance to a certain extent.
Yes.
That's not really that doesn't make sense for our kids because it's just not the same. Some kids acquire skills more slowly than others, and that's not a reflection of the teachers per se. So what we really look at is how effective they are at implementing teaching. So we break that down into very tiny components. There's a lot of observation that's involved, and they're, kind of rated on a scale in terms of what their actual teaching looks like, both one-to-one, group instruction. For teachers, we're also looking at how they're supervising their staff and how they're training other people, because that's an important part of their job. And then we also look a lot at just like what I'll call professionalism metrics, which is just like, how do you interact with other people? How do you interact with parents and families? Because that stuff is really important. It makes for either a nice or not nice working environment. So
definitely. One thing I do like about the charter school system is that teachers that are not performing or are not really there for the right reasons in one way or another are filtered out, which I really, that's where I love public schools because I'm a public school kid, but that's where I find that there's a tip to the scale for me, because there's definitely teachers in the public school system that should have retired a long time ago, or they're not there for the right reasons, or their teaching methods are outdated and are not willing to change. Because there are people that, like, during the pandemic, for example, my mom has been teaching for over 25 years already.
Amazing.
During the pandemic, she was like, okay, teach me this Google Classroom stuff. She was ready to learn. But then being the technology head in the school where I was teaching at, I was having teachers still resisting the change. So it's like, there's people that have been teaching for a while that are willing to change and are going with the times and like open to, bettering their practice. But then there's also teachers that are still stuck in their old ways and are doing the things that they've been doing for the past 20 years, which isn't effective anymore. That is not the way that children learn, especially in the type of model that you're in. You guys are really going by what the students need and not necessarily by what not the public school system, but just like education in general, how it's been in the United States for the past 100 and change years, So I really love that you guys are doing that. So what is the
and
vision?
I think
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I anytime we commit to a hire, I want that person to be successful ultimately. Like you said, sometimes things don't work out and it's just not a good match or a good fit for a person. But we try really hard to meet people where they are and give them the support and training that allow them to be successful, if at all possible. But the bottom line is, you're right. I mean, my first priority is my kids and families. So they are always going to come first.
I love that. Okay, so what do you envision for the charter school in the next 5 years? I know you guys just opened a site in the Bronx. How long has that been open?
We opened in 2017, but it feels like yesterday because the pandemic was like a 2-year, I don't know what. It just felt like a weird 2-year period. So what is my hope for the next 5 years? So I would love to be able to serve more kids. It's always kind of a push-pull for me because I want to be able to serve kids well. And I know that requires a great team of educators who are well-trained and who share the vision. So I wouldn't want to open prematurely just to get another school open. I really want to be able to do it well. I think also the thing that's maybe even jumping ahead of like another school in another borough per se would be thinking about a high school. So we have an upper school in East Harlem because we have kids that are between 13 and 21. We sort of consider that our upper school group of kids. And they have sort of their day looks a bit different. They're out in the community much more. And the skills we're focusing on are a little bit different. We don't have kids that are at that age yet in the Bronx. We will soon. I would love to think about what a high school might look like that sort of is fed from both schools, which would allow us to serve kind of more kids overall. And it's exciting to think about what an innovative high school might look like for kids with autism. Because I think, as I said, we really try and get kids out into the community. We get them at fitness classes. We get them at jobs. So my fantasy would be, a high school that's in a location or an environment that gives kids lots of access to different opportunities at different partner organizations so they could generalize skills, learn new skills, and really be as ready for life after school as possible.
I like that. My son actually goes to Manhattan School for Career Development, and they have a really great model in which they have a middle school, and that feeds into their high school. Right? If the kids are a right fit, they go right into the high school, and in the high school, they concentrate on job skills, job readiness, and also they do assessments to see where the children's strengths are. So I'm envisioning something similar for your school as well. Definitely the partnerships, and then getting staff that can help guide the students, not necessarily guidance counselors, but like kind of teaching them like how to communicate directly and ask for things that they need, and going out into the community, which you guys are already doing, but on a more like, I guess, in a way so that they can generalize it more, right? Which is what we want, because the thing is that we teach all these things in a vacuum in the classroom. However, we want to make sure that the kids are generalizing these skills in the outward environment. So yeah, a lot of people have a lot of gripes against charter schools. A lot of people are fans of them. So, it just goes, it goes, I feel like hand in hand with everything, because it's the same thing with public schools as well. So, yeah, no, I feel like we went over a lot of the things that we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the politics. I will say that I have made many friends in the charter sector, at least in New York City. And I know charter schools also across the country, very different. Like charter schools in other states, very different from charter schools in New York. These are all passionate educators who really want to do well by their students and families, the ones that I've met who are, committed to trying to lift up communities that I think have been maybe underserved when it comes to the school systems in those different communities, and who really want to get in and give kids who maybe haven't had a lot of a shot at higher education, let's say, an equal opportunity. And I know that that I know a subset of folks, so I can only speak to the people that I'm friends with and know. But certainly in terms of charter schools and their fit with the special education population in theory, or kids like ours, I think I wish there were more special education focused charter schools where, again, it's very different, when you're talking about any school that sort of serves a neurotypical population, then being able to support kids with special needs. It gets tricky, especially when the special needs become, significant, like with our kids. But I think the idea of having charter schools that are really focused on these special communities, it's kind of a great fit in a lot of ways, because again, as I said, there's this push on innovating and individualizing and doing things differently, which has really allowed us to create this program that is so effective for the kids that we serve.
I wanted to chime in also that parents, your child best, and make sure that you're doing research before you just go and apply for whatever charter school. Because a lot of the parents, at least in the community where I teach at, they do pre-K in my school, and then all of a sudden they're pulling them out and putting them in charter school. In our school, we're like trying to help the parent realize that the child needs services, because they're in denial and they feel like the charter school, which is not yours, another charter school is going to help them. And unfortunately, they're not equipped to service that child. And unless they're specialized like your school, a lot of them don't have the setting for your child. So it's big classroom, not big, but still, like, they're not going to get that individualized attention that they need. So make sure that, before you go and put your child in the charter school, you're doing your research and making sure that whatever the teachers are suggesting in the public school, that you're going and exploring that, because a lot of the time you're doing a disservice to your child, especially when you're pulling them out of one setting and dropping them in another.
Definitely. I think no matter what, you're absolutely right. I think you have to do your homework because not all charter schools are created equal. Class sizes are different. Their structure and models are different. Their ability to serve specialized populations are different. And I think, you definitely, there's no point in putting your child in an environment where they can't benefit from being there.
Yes.
They have to be able to benefit, and that's going to look different for different kids.
Yeah. I love how you've answered all the questions. So I know you're a busy person. You're running 2 campuses, and I'm sure your day is completely full. What does self-care look like for you?
Well, self-care. So people kind of roll their eyes or laugh at me because I have an incredibly ridiculous commute. I live in Brooklyn and I am commuting to East Harlem is not so bad. Bronx, not great. So I have a very long commute. None of my friends understand it. But I actually secretly love that time because I don't do any work on my commute. I take the subway both ways, and I plug into my podcasts that I love. And that's really kind of like my time to just unwind, focus on something totally different. Sometimes I'll read a book, but I really like podcasts because if I have, headphones plugged in, the rest of the world around me on that subway car is gone and I'm just lost in that world. And it's such a nice transition, I think, between that crazy hectic work environment to home. It just kind of like settles me in. So I would say that's a huge part. And then loving up on my dogs. I'm a big dog person. So that time is
how many
special
dogs
for me.
do you have?
I have 2.
What kind?
So I have both one's a Labradoodle, but one is a full rescue. She's part Chow, part Lab.
Oh, so cute. I have a Labradoodle too. We're trying to get him trained to become a service dog for my son. But he is
Amazing.
A handful. He's 9 months.
Yeah, they require a lot of
so much energy. Yes. But such a good boy. Like I'm just like I love you so much.
So sweet. Yeah, so sweet.
So, are there any other projects that you have surrounding autism, like personal or business wise?
I think that we're always looking to see how we can impact the broader community. We are small schools by design. We serve very few students and families overall. So we're always looking to see if there are ways that we can broaden our impact. And that has looked like pre-COVID, and we're getting back to it now. Lots of outreach in different trainings of staff, also opening our doors and having educators and other professionals come in to see what we're doing so that we can share practices and try and encourage folks to think about the designs we're using and the systems and all of that. So we've started to do that again now post-COVID, which is great. We just actually had a school group come in today. We have another one coming in tomorrow. These are all educators who are just really eager to be able to better serve the kids with autism that are in their classrooms and are just hungry for information and tools. And so I think one of the things that we've been committed to, and I want to recommit to post-COVID, is just continuing to do more of that, really trying to, share what we've learned and spread practices so that educators can be more successful with the kids that they serve.
One last question, because I'm a technology guru at my school. So what does educational technology look in the classrooms over there? Like, do you guys have smart boards or Promethean boards? And like, do the kids have one-to-one technology? Like, what is the funding like for that?
So we have gotten some grants over time that have allowed us to purchase different kinds of technology. And I would say, short answer again, like with everything we do, different for different kids, right? And different in different classrooms. But I would say we do use smart boards to a certain extent. We use a lot of apps on iPads and laptops for kids and different sort of educational software like that. One of the things that I think is kind of cool if you're a tech head that you might enjoy that we've done, and this started with COVID, but we're kind of carrying it over, is we've gotten these kind of, oh gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it, these like robotic devices that you can put an iPad on that actually move. You can control it remotely. And it can move in and out of classrooms.
Oh, I know. Oh, they have these in the Korean. They have them in the Korean restaurants. I forgot what they're called, but basically it's like a robot that is like motorized and it goes around.
It's a robot. Yes. So you
That's
have a screen.
amazing.
Basically, it just allows you to join remotely, but also move. So we do a lot of, I mentioned that we have a lot of parent involvement. Just about every month for most of our kids, we have what we call a clinic meeting where parents are invited to attend, and they actually were in the classroom with them. So they get to see firsthand exactly what their child is doing, and we kind of problem solve together. That's prohibitive for certain parents who work during the day, can't get to school, whatever it might be. It's hard it takes a lot of time to get to school, find parking, the whole deal. So with this system, not only can they kind of be present remotely, but we can move it so they can actually follow their child.
Awesome.
So we're doing so much throughout the school. It's not just in the classroom at one desk. So that's been kind of a cool addition.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay. So I know that you guys are working on getting funding and grants and stuff like that. So if somebody, we don't know who's going to listen to the podcast, but if somebody's willing to donate, where can they do that at?
They should definitely go to our website, which is www.nycautismcharterschool.org. And there is a donation page. You can select a particular school. So if you have an affinity for the Bronx, you can donate to our Bronx school specifically, or just make it undetermined which school. Every dollar helps us. We are reliant on grants and donors to be able to fund some of the incredible things that we do. So anything would be much appreciated.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, and I'm going to end the podcast how I always end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod and follow Julie on IG at, can you please drop your handle?
Are you kidding me? Like an Instagram? Oh.
For the charter school.
NYC. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hold on. You can't end like this because I'm the worst social media person. So I have to actually look up give me one sec. I was not prepared. Okay. It's Instagram is NYCA_CS.
Okay. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at marcy@comadreandopod.com or slide up into my DMs. Please visit our website, www.comadreandopod.com, to read our latest blog posts, find out about future events, and get your official Comadre merch. Thank you for spending time with your comadre. And Julie, I'm going to welcome you to the Comadre Club. You're officially a comadre. Welcome.
Yay! Thank you. This has been so fun, Marcy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Do you have a minute for Comadre time?